Sorry. I'm like sitting outside and there's like a shit ton of pumpkins surrounding me right now. Alright, let's do this. I'll move this actually right here. So, hello my lovely little jack-o'-lanterns, and welcome to a special little YouTube video that I've decided to do today. So I am outside right now, and it's a beautiful, beautiful day. As you can see, I'm in my beautiful backyard, and there's the beautiful ocean in the city of Santa Barbara. So I've decided to actually do a talking video kind of thing, like not necessarily a Q&A because no one's asked me questions about it, but essentially like maybe just talking. Just talking about like my book series and stuff, and just future plans for it, and give you like some background story of like the characters, the story, and like the lore of the Siren'S Call. So I recently uploaded a video, or my second audiobook, into 2 parts because it was so long. It was 19 hours, so I had to split it because the YouTube length time is like 12 hours, so I had to split it. So that is up on my channel. I uploaded it about a week ago or so. So I don't expect people to honestly like check it out as much because it's so long, and I know it's kind of a daunting title because it's so long, like 10 hours and 8 hours. That's a lot of dedication of listening to an audiobook. But like, I'm not saying you have to sit there and listen to the entire thing in one sitting. It's meant to be taken in pieces. So I would really appreciate, you know, if people would like really kind of just check it out. If people would just check it out and kind of like listen to it some, because I'm trying to get my books out there. I have my first 2, I have them out here with me, but I have my first 2 books with me right now out here, and I'm writing the 3rd book right now, and so forth with the entire book series. But I worked really, really hard on that audiobook. It took me about 6 or 7 months to create, from editing to putting in music and sound effects to the voice acting. I had to re-record stuff. It was a lot of time and effort that I put into making that. What time is it? Shit. Okay. It's like 1:30 in the afternoon. So I'll just talk about the series. So I know I've mentioned my books some in my other videos. I'm not trying to come off as bragging about it, like, oh, look at me, I wrote, you know, a huge book series, or I'm writing this cool book series. I just, you know, my girlfriend for a very long time has wanted me to put my novels out on some type of website to be sold, and my audiobooks on some type of video platform. And obviously YouTube is the perfect platform for that. And I just really appreciate her support, and I've mentioned her in a couple of my videos before, but she's a fantastic girlfriend, and she is really, really, really amazing. And even though our relationship is long distance right now, but we will be reunited in person in the coming months. But she's been insanely supportive, and I've really, really appreciated her input and advice on some of my projects, and she's given me some great ideas to create. So, but she supported me through the entirety of writing both of these books and to continue the series. She's a very big supporter of it. She claims that she loves my stories, and so I really appreciate her support. I just have for so long been trying to get it out for people to see, because I was tired of, because I would just literally I would just write like these huge books and then just leave them on my laptop. The only one who would see it would really honestly be my girlfriend, and no one else in the world would, not even really my family to an extent. And I just kind of left it there in the dark. But after constant advice from her, I just kind of, was like, fuck it. Like, I'm tired of my projects just being in the shadows. Let's bring it to the light. And here we are. So I'm trying my best to get it out there. And I don't want to come off as bragging or like being repetitive and be like, check out my book. I'm writing this book series. I just want it to be known to a degree. I don't want to be a famous author. I just want to be at least some kind of known in the world. Yeah, so I have the first book with me right here. I also have my replica of a flintlock pistol here with me, just for pirate aesthetics. Oh, and by the way, tonight actually, I am doing the sea shanty live stream around 9 o'clock. That's Pacific time, so for Eastern time, that's 11 o'clock for you. I was originally going to do it tomorrow, but I decided to do it tonight, and I had to extend it from doing it at 8 because I'm going out to dinner tonight with my family, so I couldn't, do it around 8:30. So I extended it a little bit, but I hope to see you guys there. We'll basically be listening to a whole album of sea shanties and just talking about it, just chilling together. So anyway, this is my first book, but it is to be redone. It's only 200 pages, not that long. It is being reformatted right now because when I was publishing it, some of the format was a little goofy looking. Like there was like commas and periods where they shouldn't be. So I wanted to fix that, and so it's being reformatted right now. It's taking a hell of a long time. It's been doing it for months, but it is going to be reformatted. This is the second one. So the first one is Act 1 is the beginning of a new adventure. This is Act 2 with a flintlock. The 5 letters are marked. So yes, this is obviously, compared to Book 1, a significantly bigger book. It is 790 pages of just pure epicness, so of pirate adventures. So I guess where I could start off with talking about this is kind of where I wanted to start the series. Originally, the first book was meant to be a short story, and I wasn't really planning to write a book series about pirates. I just wanted to write like some type of story in the 1600s. I've always really found the 17th and 18th century era really interesting to me. There's this, like the Age of Sail kind of setting. It's always been just a fascinating endeavor to study for me. I love like ships, like old ships. I like pistols, like flintlocks and muskets and swords, and I love like the pirate life, just kind of like adventuring to like lands and exploring the world, because during that time a lot of the world was really unknown to people, and it was scary because there were millions of accounts where sailors and explorers would, go to these lands and just get killed by savages or just succumb to diseases, and it was, it was just, it was pretty terrible. Sorry, there's people up there. But as I was saying, I've always found it interesting. Just even the way they spoke back then, like that older type of English, I thought is really beautiful in its own way. I mean, I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with like how we speak now in modern time. It's just me personally, I think there's something intriguing and beautiful about it. Like how they would speak, instead of saying like, "What's up, dude?" It'd be like, "Hello, good sir, good morrow." How is thee doing? Like, I just find it beautiful in its own right. On the subject of just the time period, it's a very specific story, and I know it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. But I when I was writing the first book, technically the first short story, but then I told myself I'm going to extend it into a book series, and that's when I wrote Book 2, which is obviously significantly longer. And that's why it's weird, because one's super short, one's super long. It's because I wasn't planning to extend, because this was already getting published at the time I made that decision. So I kind of couldn't really like change things. So I'm okay with it. It's just I sometimes kind of wish the first one was a bit longer, but it's a short little foundation that builds the Siren'S Call like world and lore. And so it is going to be a 27-book series that talks about the family tree and legacy of the Heartstones from 1590 to 2017, and the span of 27 books. And so basically it is a whole timeline of them, from Henry's father to Henry's sons to Henry's sons and daughters, and so forth, all the way to modern time. And in each story it's a different time period and a different setting, a different location, because pretty much from the first books to about the 1800s is when it's all like naval, like ocean, sea, sailing stuff. Then that stops and it gets into like, they go to America, like the family kind of branches off and travels to America. Then it goes to like the Civil War and like the Gold Rush and the 1830s on like southern plantations, and all the way to like painters and poets, and 1920s and like New York and editor, newspaper editor, like all kinds of stuff. But it's all tied back to the very beginning of Henry Heartstone in the 1600s, and Henry's Heartstone father, whose name is Francis Heartstone, in the 15 and early 1620s. So I really wanted to create this whole family legacy, basically, and cover 400 years of epic history. Because I think something about that is really intriguing, and I can't recall that many authors have done something like that, and so I kind of want to be the first. No offense. And I know it's a big task, and I just got to take it one step at a time, because it's 27 books is a lot. It's basically my magnum opus is this series. But anyway, that's where it came from. I originally wrote it when I was in college, and then I decided to extend it into a huge series. Originally it was going to be actually only like 6 books, but then I extended it into 27 books to make this huge family legacy, to cover the timeline of the Heartstone family tree. So so basically what the story is about is it takes place in 1678 in the first one to 1680. So the first one covers 2 years. The second one takes place from 1680 to 1686, so that's 6 years. And they basically, it's about these 3 friends, Henry Heartstone, Daniel Augsworth, and Timothy McGaw, who sign up to board this British ship called the Deltaron with a man named Captain Samuel Bridges. And it's like a cargo ship, so they're trading like spices. Because back then, there was a lot of ships like that would travel to countries and trade and barter, and that's how they make money. And so they were a cargo ship sailing. They go to like Sweden and Ireland and Norway and all that stuff. And obviously I put some romance in it. In Norway, Henry meets this woman named Brita Hagen. I'm not going to give the entire story away because I don't want you guys to read it. I don't want to spoil it for you. But basically they go on this quest to search. They find out their captain has been searching for a mermaid to bring back to London to show everyone like, oh, I made this big discovery that sailors have claimed to see these people, these mer creatures for centuries. And there's never been proven existence of them. And then he wants to be the one to, search it. But the main characters end up being closer to the captain, and so he trusts them, and he shares his idea with them. And he's like, okay, let's do this. We can go search for the mermaid. But they go on this huge chase across the globe to get her back, and it just, it folds into this huge tale. And really the tale of the mermaid is just Henry's story. Because in future endeavors and future stories, it's a completely different story with different characters and a different time period. So just Henry's story is the Siren's Call. Or then, for example, like when it gets to book 7, which is Henry's sons, Thomas and Edward, it's all based in like Norway and the Middle East. And so about getting these blood runes and stuff, and it's a totally different story, not even connected to the mermaid. But it's the same, comes from the same family timeline. So that's basically what it is. It's just a pirate adventure, and it develops into this long family legacy through centuries of history, basically. And I'm really proud of it, and I've always wanted to write some type of story like this. And when I was younger, I just didn't have the willpower to do it. But now that I'm older and I studied a shit ton out of the period, so I can get it historically accurate. I mean, not all of it is historically accurate because it's got mermaids and it's a fantasy historical fiction type of novel, but it's based it's based around real world events at that time, but the meat, the bones of the story is fiction. The characters are fiction. Now I am including some regular characters like that are real, like Blackbeard, Calico Jack, and Bonnie. I am including some like real life pirates, but I'm gonna give them each personalities and stuff. So, sorry, I'm thirsty. I'm talking a lot. But I'm not gonna explain the whole timeline to you because that will get super confusing, and I want you to experience the timeline when you read the book or listen to the audiobooks on my channel. But it's basically this long kind of story, really, and I don't want to spoil it for you, so I'm not going to go too much in depth. I'm just really now going to talk about, the characters and kind of the lore of it. So yes, it takes, the first 2 books cover about 8 years, pretty much. And the total span of books 1 through 4 cover about 40-ish. No, not 40, not 40, sorry. About 20-ish years, 20, 30 years. And then book 5 is the prequel, which is Henry's childhood and when he meets Daniel. And then book 6 is his father in the 15 and early 1600s. And then from then on, so forth with Henry's sons and to the timeline. So I just really think that I've always wanted to write a story in this setting. I've always found it very interesting to me. And it's always been an enjoyable subject to study. But I wanted to make the story dark, and there is some comedic moments in the books, but there's not many because, if you really think about it, it's a rough, I wanted to create a realistic life, like trying to cover everything that they would do, like carriage riding, sword fighting, eating, drinking, dancing, talking, laughing, sailing, ship navigations, walking through a town, saddling up a horse, every single kind of gesture and mannerism a man or woman would do during that era. And I wanted to capture it in full detail. And part of my writing style is I'm extremely detailed. I love writing details about like clothing and items and weapons and stuff, and like buildings and stuff like that. And I like even mentioned like when someone's walking through grass, like the flecks of dewdrops that drop on their boot tip, like just that kind of detail. And like mention the creases in like a wood beam in the side of a tavern. Like, just I love that attention to detail because it really, I feel like it builds the story. And I didn't want to make it just in like one setting. Like I didn't want to make it just in London and then that's it. It just takes place in England. I wanted to make the story worldwide, so you feel like you're going on this big adventure because you're going off to these different tropical areas and these European cities, and each city has a different feel to it, a different vibe, different characters, a different type of story to it. And so I wanted to make it feel like you're with the characters. You're sailing across the ocean to these places with them. And I think I cover that pretty well. And it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. It is a very, very brutal story. It's dark, it's grim, there's a lot of death in it, there's a lot of, I hate to say it, there's a lot of like cruelty, especially to minorities in the story because it's the 1600s. There was slavery was around. There was women weren't treated correctly back then. It was just a different time. But I wanted to make the characters not like heroes, but like I didn't want to make them come from a richer kind of background, if that makes sense. Like not like a royalty background. Like the thing that I really admire about the characters are created is they're just everyday people. Because in a lot of books you see like all their upcoming heroes and they're from like a rich house, or their dad's a famous actor, or like they're an outcast in school, or whatever, like the underdog type of thing. And these guys that I made, especially because of the period of the 1600s, they're not underdogs. They're just normal working class people that just happen to be thrown into this epic adventure. And they end up becoming richer and developing, a kind of a hero-like charisma to them, but throughout the stories. But at the beginning of the story, they're just like cut and dry, hardworking people in the 17th century. Like they're not like I came from like a king or a queen or whatever. And that's what I wanted to give a feel, so anyone can relate to them. Like someone who is in a way, even though it's a different time period, I'm trying to, if this makes sense, even though it's a different time period, I'm trying to make it to where a human being can relate to them on an emotional level and see like, oh yeah, I've been through that. And I'm even going to cover like suicide, depression, anxiety, like, and because back then men, especially men, didn't just feelings like people do today, like we do today, and like therapy and stuff. Because if you cried, you get shot. Like it was just a rough era, and it was just very, very difficult. But and I'm not saying like everyone back then was like that, but it was pretty much the run of the mill. And I just really think that, connecting those emotions with those people during the 17th century really would make people who are reading it today relate to those people. Like, be like, oh yeah, I went through depression. I've gone through anxiety. I know how this book character feels. Or I've been unsure about what I want to do in life. Or, I'm angry all the time. Like, how do I get rid of this anger? Just cover real life emotions that every person feels in their day-to-day life, and include it into an era that most people don't address in books and movies and stuff. Because it's usually put on the back burner. But the character, like Henry Hearthstone, he's just like a dude. Like he comes from like a simple farming family with a younger sister, a father, and mom. He's not super rich. I mean, they're not like poor, but he's just about middle class. Like he's okay, but I mean, they still struggle for money. Daniel comes from a very poor background. He was a blacksmith before. His father was a drunkard. He kind of raised himself. Timothy came from a farm as well, but Timothy had a bit more upholdings with financial stuff than the other two, but he still, back then it's poor. It's just a poor time. And so it was like, they're just, regular people that turn into heroes. And I just wanted to tell their story that way. Sorry, that was my sister. I really enjoyed writing this series, and I'm still writing the third one right now. I'm about a quarter of the way through it, and I just really think, I'm really proud of it. There will be audiobooks for all 27 books as well, through all the history, because it's like you're reading through history. You're going from 1590 to 2017. That's a long ass time of family history, and so going through that fucking thing is it's insane to me. And it would be like you're reading through time, like snippets of history, like different eras of history with the same family legacy. I think it would be cool to tell the story that way. And it's a very, I know it's not everyone's, forte, because it's dark. There's a lot of gore. It's graphic. It's sexually graphic. There's a lot of profane swear words. There's a lot of there's some racial slurs in it. It's because I wanted to make it, never mind the fantasy era and the fictional era of it, I wanted to make it as realistic to the time period as possible. Because if you really think, life back then was not fun. It's not like you're frolicking through the fucking daisies, man. You're constantly worried about if you're gonna get killed, you're gonna die that day, you got disease, you gotta worry about feeding yourself. It was a hard life. You're sleeping on a hard ship deck. It's just not, it's not like you're sleeping in a soft bed. I'm sure there were times where you could sleep in a soft inn or tavern bed for a night or two, but you're hiking through, there's a lot of lands back then that sailors never found. And so it was just scary. A lot of the world was unknown to them. So there was a lot of that adventure and intrigue about what's out there in the world. And I wanted to capture that by them traveling across the globe and discovering cities that the characters haven't been to yet. But I just really wanted to, it's not, a childhood like Pirates of the Caribbean sugarcoating pirates for it. It's real life fucking pirates, man. Don't get me wrong, pirates are just flat out awesome. But even just the part there's torture in it, I included in the second book, just Slow John, one of the characters, the state executioner, torturing a character named William Stanley, stabbing him and just putting him on the rack. It's just not a nice time period. And so I just really wanted to cover. I wanted to make it an adventurous type of epic story with a lot of action and cool fights and an interesting kind of fantasy element to it. But I also wanted to have those dark undertones of like all this like cool stuff is happening, but it's still, the characters do what they have to do. They're not afraid. Like Henry, he's a smart fellow. He's got a lot of common sense. But he's not afraid to kill someone. If someone's threatening his life or his wife or his friends, he will kill that person. It was just, it's a cut and dry type of life back then, and I wanted to capture that as best I could and capture every single element in the pirate life that they did, from drinking rum to eating to sailing to swimming to running to discovering new animals and talking about them, to having conversations about different minerals, like trading. Even if it may be boring to a common reader, I just wanted to include and make it as detailed as possible to fully envelop and give that time period justice for what it was. It's just a very interesting time period, and it's a very interesting piece of history that most people, I think, don't cover as much, because most, I hate to say it, most authors, when they write about this time period, it's shitty romance novels, and no one has ever really written a epic sea pirate adventure set in that era that is like realistic and is dark and rough and bloody. And I just think I want to do it justice. And I want to make the story true to the characters I'm writing and to the world I'm creating. And there's a lot of lore to it. Like there's mermaids in it, there's sea creatures, there's Davy Jones, ghost ships. Like there's still a lot of fantasy elements to it that I will include. There are going to be some books that are more realistic than others, but I will always try to have some type of fantastical element to the books, whether it be minor or big. But yeah, it was just really, and it's just been a journey creating these series, and my girlfriend just constantly supporting me through it. I thank you so much, Ashley, if you're watching this video right now, and you are a constant support in my life, and I really appreciate that, because these books are like my baby. Like they're my bread and butter, and I'll be probably 80 fucking years old by the time I write 27 books in this series, but at least I'll feel accomplished completing it. Oh yeah, I forgot about this. I got this cool pipe, like today actually it came in, so it's pretty nice. Yeah, but I just really think that just creating a story at this time is, I want to give it, the feel that it deserves, the right vibe, if that makes sense. So yeah, I will continue writing the book series and just keep talking about, a lot of the characters I wanted to include, like there's Brita Hogan, who's a lute player, and I wanted to include this kind of random cast of characters that in reality you don't think would fit together, because they have such different personalities, but they actually work really well together. Like there's Henry, who's the main character. It's mainly told through his perspective. There is moments where it's told from another character's perspective, but mainly it's from Henry's. It's first person, so it's like I. There's his best friend and two best friends, Daniel and Timothy. Henry's wife, or his future wife, Brita Hogan, who's a Norwegian lute player, who at first, is kind of a dainty little female, but over time Henry ends up teaching her how to fight and become, a female pirate. Then there's Eleanor, who is Timothy's wife, same type of thing. She's Egyptian, she's a medicine woman. There's Marquis de Lafayette, who is a French captain and also a very fine wine connoisseur and cook. And he is just a very jovial type fellow, but he can be very serious when he needs to be. There's Jebediah Golden Rivers, who was originally a captain, but his crew mutinied against him. He is Finnish, and he's a very rough kind of tumble type dude. He is greedy. He likes gold. There is Ka Wakilia, who is only in the second book, but he will come later in the third book as well. Who is a tribal black slave who is from Africa, who is one of Jeb's crew. There's Finn Inkspell, who is kind of like Timothy. They're both kind of bubbly personalities, like optimistic about a lot of things. Yeah, that's pretty much the main characters. There's Mose in book 2, who's a slave kid who ends up growing up with Henry and the family. And they just all kind of go on this adventure. They're very different personalities. Like Daniel's very rough and tumble, and kind of like Jeb, he's tough. He's strong. He's a hard worker, but he's kind of immature around like money and women. Timothy's very lighthearted. He's kind of innocent in his own way, kind of like Finn. And Henry's like he'll shoot you straight. He's very narrow. He's very like narrow and optimistic, but also has a lot of common sense, and he's smart as hell. And can figure out how to get the job done when it needs to get done, no matter what the situation is. He usually can stay calm. He doesn't panic that much. He's able to control his emotions a lot of the time. But it's just, a good cast of characters. And there'll be new characters, obviously, with Henry in the later series. And obviously when Henry passes away, which is in book 7. And then continue his legacy with other new characters. But there is like new characters in book 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, so forth. So yeah, I'm really proud of it. It's got a lot of ocean lore with sea creatures, a lot of pirate stuff. I really wanted to capture like the pirate life. Like, yeah, they drink rum and stuff like that. There's some smaller elements that are kind of like Pirates of the Caribbean, like their obsession with rum. I kind of exaggerated that a little bit just for like story purposes. And kind of like the obsession of like plundering ships and getting greedy with gold and all that kind of stuff. But I kept pretty true to the realistic pirate-esque type theme. And it's just really just one big epic pirate adventure, and I'm really, really proud of it. So I am writing on book 3. Book 3 probably won't be out till sometime in the middle of next year to the end of next year. It's going to take me a while to write it and produce the 3rd audiobook for it. I'm remastering the first audiobook right now because just the voice acting was really bad. I was kind of unsure what I was doing when I was making the project. It was when I was just starting writing the first one. It was just not up to par compared to the second one, which is like insanely better. Like I do specific voices for the characters, and I have no specific voices for the characters in the first audiobook. So I didn't want to upload that to the channel and then people will be like, well, this one's shitty, but the second one's really good. Like the voices aren't similar to the ones used in the second one. I wanted to keep it like a flowing, continuous thing, where it's not so like different from each other. Because the voice acting was bad. You couldn't hear what I was saying at the time. It was hard to tell who was speaking about what. So, I try to put emotion behind the characters when I read their dialogue and stuff, depending on how they feel. Just to give it more light with the audiobook. Because basically how my girlfriend Ashley puts it is basically it's a movie without the visuals. There's music, sound effects, like sitting at a tavern, there's people talking and muttering, music playing in the background, a fire crackling, bottles clinking, like just, door opening and closing from pedestrians coming in. I try to give it light and life, like I kind of recently did with The Black Goat, like that horror historical series. I try to give the story light without visuals, and I think I do it decently well. Indeed, I think I try to give it justice. So yeah, I've rambled on long enough about the series. So I am writing the 3rd one right now. It will be out in the coming year, and so forth with the other series and more audiobooks for the series as well. I really hope you guys check these out on Amazon and buy them and support me. And same thing, listen to the audiobooks on my channel when they're uploaded. I will try to get the second one remastered as quick as I can. I probably won't get it up till like the end of December, so it will be, or January of next year. It will be a bit before I can get it up, but I will try my best to get it up as quick as possible. But things like that take time. So thank you for listening to my long rant of my book series, and I really hope that you guys buy it, check it out, and get enveloped in a beautiful 17th century pirate adventure. I think that's it. So I will see you, my lovely jack-lanterns, another time. Take care.